Hello, BookTube. We're continuing this library tour, but you'll notice right away that the geography is different. That's because when I was prepping, when I was looking at the next shelf we were going to do in the second bookcase, I realized that I had forgotten a shelf on the first bookcase. And the reason I forgot is because it was there was piles of crap in front of it, books and whatnot, pillows and whatnot, that made it visually not pop onto my radar, which is a perfect example of what needs to change about these bookcases, and by extension my whole library, is that it needs to be smaller and neater. So we're going to do this bottom shelf before we go on to that next bookcase. Okay, so this first one is a novel by Gary Maynard. This is Plum Belly, a story about three young people on the open ocean, two of whom are a sexual couple, and all of whom have interpersonal tensions roiling between them, and there is also a plot that happens to them when they're out on the open ocean. And I got sent this by my editor at the Martha's Vineyard Gazette to review. The author has ties to the vineyard, and if that hadn't happened, I would never have heard about this book. And it's a perfect illustration of what I've talked about on this channel, which is that there are small press and indie books like this that are absolutely first rate that none of us know about. Because when you go the indie route, you don't have books piled in bookstores. You don't have the publicity arm that the mainstream publishers can put behind your work if they want to. They don't often do that anymore, but if they do, they can guarantee that a general reader will have a much better chance of knowing that the book exists. I am not a general reader. I am a very omnivorous and very active reader, and I had no idea this existed until it was sent to me, and it's fantastic. So it gives me the willies to think of how many such things we're missing. Okay, this is Aviva Gottlieb Zornberg. This is Reflections on Genesis. This is The Beginning of Desire. Just a terrific, terrific book, densely elusive and scholarly on my favorite book of the Bible. There's just something to think about on every page. Every line takes 3 pages for it to go through. It's just an amazing commentary on Genesis. And what is this now? Oh, okay, great. This is a book that we have seen a couple of times on this channel recently. This is Roberto Saviano's debut novel, The Piranhas. And this is the advance copy that came out in, I think, August of last year. And the cover changed from this to the dust jacket of the hardcover. The dust jacket of the hardcover didn't look exactly like this. We're going to see it because I think I have a hardcover here somewhere. But the dust jacket of the hardcover sapped the color out of this and centered in. It closed in on the gun. And that had a couple of negative effects for me. First of all, it eliminated the beauty of the natural surroundings, believe it or not. The beauty of Naples is a theme, is a thread that runs throughout this book. But also, more importantly than that, when you center in on black and white on the gun, you lose sight of the vulnerability of the boy, which is very much evident in this book. He looks like a kid with this, the skinny arm and the hairdo and whatnot, and that was lessened by the dust jacket on the hardcover. And I think both of those elements are, or at least the vulnerability of the boy, is brought into much sharper focus in the movie cover. I actually kind of like the movie cover, but I very much recommend the book. I very much do. I also recommend the author's nonfiction debut, Gomorrah. That was also really good. Surprised that his book, Gomorrah, did not get him killed. I'm hoping that that does not happen. Okay, this next one is Anne Boyd Ryu. This is Meg Jo Beth Amy. This is her book not only about Little Women, but also about its composition, the biography of its author, its reception, its economics, its history. Just a great, big, affectionate, knowing love story about a book. I wish that every book had a book like this, and they don't. Some of them have 500, and most of them have none at all. Okay, all right. This is by Catherine Gillespie. This is The Cow with ear tag number 1389. And it's about just what you would think. It's about just what you would think. It follows the personal story of one cow through the American meat industry, the monstrous meat industry, and by extension, it is a book on all of the people who are caught up in that industry. And I use the word "people" advisedly because I'm talking about someone who can suffer, and someone who can love, and someone who can step outside of herself and be altruistic, and someone who has moods and a prankish sense of humor, and who does not want to suffer, and who does not want to die. And you'll notice in all of that, I'm not talking about abstract geometry, and I'm not talking about SAT scores, any more than I'm talking about the length of a trunk or the depth of an abdominal pouch. I'm not talking about any one specific attribute of any one specific species, regardless of whether or not it's the species that runs the planet. I'm talking about the things that make it okay to farm and harvest an animal, as opposed to the things that make it not okay. And when you are farming and harvesting animals who can feel and love and laugh and giggle and play and suffer and lament and grieve, it's not okay to farm and slaughter them. There are a million books on the subject. This is the one I will probably keep. It's tremendously effective. Okay, the next one is a novel. This is a Martha Gellhorn novel by Paula McLean, the author of The Paris Wife. This is Love and Ruin, about her relationship with Ernest Hemingway, among other things. And I don't think I have the trade paperback. This is out in trade paperback now, and I don't think I have that trade paperback because I liked this cover better. This is a love story, and the trade paperback has only a woman on the cover. So the both covers are fairly evocative, but I prefer this one, and I'm keeping the hardcover because I really do. The book was really good. I may easily reread it. Okay, this next one is by Joel Berger. This is Extreme Conservation, which at first, looking at the cover and hearing the description, I thought, okay, that it'll be a climate crisis book, and it is that. But it also has a lot of natural history and research on musk oxen, which was an added bonus for me. I love that sort of thing. Okay, all right. These next two are novels, Mr. Eternity and The World is a Narrow Bridge by Aaron Thier, who is a cutie patootie. And these are incredibly sharp, really smart, well done novels. I love this guy's work. Absolutely love it. Can't wait to read anything new that he writes. Okay, this next one is by Heather Montgomery. It is Something Rotten. This is everything that you ever wanted to know or maybe didn't want to know about roadkill. How it got there, what happens to it, how it's removed, and of course, inevitably, whether or not it's edible and under what conditions. I before this book, I did not know that I had so many questions about roadkill, and I was thrilled. Oh, all right, fantastic. Okay, this is great, but it doesn't belong out here. This is by Janet Mount, and this is Bibliophile. Just a big, gorgeously illustrated book about books and about bookshops. Just fantastic. Just an amazing browser's paradise for the book lover. And I'm glad that I kept it, but of course does not belong out here. It belongs in I have two shelves in the other room of books about books and bookshops and book essays and whatnot, and that's where it belongs. So, okay, all right. This also belongs in the other room. This is the recent Mariner paperback reprint of the collected stories of Eudora Welty. Just fantastic. I mean, it's really, really well made, and prettier. So I will probably replace the collected stories of Eudora Welty in hardcover when it first came out. It had a rather dowdy brown cover. I'll probably just replace this with that. So this belongs in there as well. And this also illustrates a point that's come up on this channel before, and that will come up in this library tour many times, which is that the itch that I, like any reader, have to read backlist is currently scratched by the new release world. I'm almost entirely a creature of the world of new releases. They're the huge bulk of what I read, and even though that's true, you could still have an itch to read something older, and you might think, well, okay, that's an itch that I'm going to have to go to a used bookstore. But no, no. As we've seen on this channel, I get reprints of stuff all the time, and often very attractive. Often the reprints come to me in the edition that I will want to keep them in. So this is bad news for the goodwill. Okay, this is from 2018. This is Jamie Suskin's Future Politics, about hacking and cybernetic influence, cybernetic warfare, cybernetic politics, and that's not a niche subject anymore. Because if those things can play an active part, maybe even a preponderant part, in electing the President of the United States, who has unimpeded access to our nuclear arsenal, who has an enormous sway over our economic arsenal, and who might, once elected, prove to be crazy or evil or both. That affects everybody in the whole world. I wish that weren't the case, but it does. When we elect a good president, a noble man, then I'm glad that that's true. When we elect a racist, sexist, fascist, lying moron, I wish that we were Liechtenstein, so that we had no effect on the rest of the world. But this is, I think the author is right to say that he is writing a biography of the future. I really think that's true. That's usually hyperbole on the part of an author, but not in this case. Okay, speak of the devil. This is Bob Woodward's book, Fear, just crammed with book reviews. Everywhere that I read that wrote about it, I pulled it out and put it in this book. This is coming out in paperback in a little bit. It's Woodward doing his thing, where he finds sources, he cultivates long-term sources, short-term sources, in order to paint a portrait of a presidency in power. And the portrait here is just staggering, just staggeringly angering and frightening. And thanks to, Woodward is not Michael Wolff, so I actually believe everything that's in that book, almost without exception. There are a couple of things in it I thought, okay, that might be a little dramatic license, but mostly, it's like Woodward himself says, if I'm caught in a demonstrable lie more than a few times, my career is over. So I have to get this stuff as nailed down as I can. And I think it's one of the indispensable books about the Trump administration. There are more to come, but I think so far it is, and they belong together. Okay, great. All right, this is by John Hendricks. This is his graphic novel of the life of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was killed for trying to kill Hitler. And I didn't think that this could be made into an effective graphic novel, and this is beautiful. It's fantastically done, especially the last page. And this was at the same time that there was an incredibly effective graphic novel of The Diary of Anne Frank. So that really opened my eyes to the possibility of graphic novel format fiction and nonfiction. So, there's the bean making an appearance. So I strongly recommend this. Could be in paperback now, for all I know. Okay, here's another example of backlist coming to my door in beautiful new editions. These are the poems of T.S. Eliot. These are from FSG. They just decided to remake these, and they are gorgeous. They are as beautiful as any T.S. Eliot edition that I would ever have. Now I have them. Okay. All right. This is doubles. I don't know why I have doubles of this. This is Andrew Holland's great gay novel, Dancer from the Dance, in two different. This is the iconic Plume cover that they did. I noticed recently that Dancer from the Dance has a new reprint. It doesn't have this cover. It feels sacrilege for it not to have this cover. I've had this in every cover, including the mass market paperback that came out. This is the iconic cover, and it's been weird to watch the reactions to young gay men in 2019, a year that none of us thought we would ever reach, encounter this book, this classic of a totally different era of gay life. It's been fascinating to watch. Okay, all right. This is by Diane Highbridge. This is a much younger man, a very effective novel about exactly that. A woman on the in her late 30s or mid 30s falls in love, not just personally but also sexually, with the young teenage son of a friend of hers. And there's not much more to it than that, and I thought remarkably well done, just remarkably well done, memorably so. I've read it a couple of times. I go back to it. Okay, this is a novel by Stephen March. This is his debut. This is Raymond plus Hannah, a love story about two people in love that has annotations on the sides. That you would think, oh, that's pretty twee, that's going to get annoying pretty fast, but it didn't actually. So okay, this is Robert Tiraboschi. This is The Apothecary's Shop. This is a historical novel about Venice, so obviously it belongs with the other historical novels about Venice that we have seen on this channel. It's by Europa Editions, and I'm always up for a Venice novel, but what this is doing marooned down here, I have no idea. I will put it aside just as a reminder to move it. Okay, this next one is Wolf in White Van. by John Darnielle, who I guess was part of a rock and roll band. I did not know anything about him when I first read this. I thought it was just fantastically good. And he's written another book, wrote one novel after this that I also loved. So this is a guy who has multiple talents. I've never actually heard the music of his, what is his band? The Mountain Goats. But this is the story of a through-the-mail role-playing game called Trace Italian. It's all done through snail mail, and boy, oh boy, it's fantastic, including a rousing climax, which is ordinarily something I don't say about contemporary fiction. And then we have a historical novel. This is Richard Kluger's book, The Sheriff of Nottingham. A historical novel about the villain in the Robin Hood stories, but this is beautiful, just fantastic. And gives us, of course, a three-dimensional character instead of a villain. In fact, there's no villain at all, and oh my God, the portrait in this novel of King John is utterly indelible. Utterly indelible. You will never forget it. Whereas, curiously enough, Robin of Locksley, Robin Hood, is a minor and forgettable character in this book. I just loved it. I cannot recommend it strongly enough. And then the last one for this mistake here, we missed a shelf. Okay, this is Paul Kingsnorth. This is The Wake. And this is his... it's a historical novel, maybe, or a post-apocalyptic novel, maybe, and for the purposes of this novel, he invents a language. And unlike in, like, for instance, Tolkien, where the language pops up in bits and pieces, the whole book is told in that language, and you just have to learn it as you go along. I started it and thought, you cannot possibly sustain this, and he does, miraculously so. It's amazing as a reading experience. And, you know, halfway through, I was having so much fun figuring out what the language was and how to keep reading it, that halfway through I thought, okay, you know what's the amazing thing here is not so much the linguistic virtuosity of the writer, it's that he's actually making a story. There's a very moving story, a personal story involved here, quite apart from the language. If you told this in straightforward English, it would still be an incredibly moving novel. So the two put together so that was all I could ask for. And that is it. That is this bottom shelf. This is the shelf that we missed. So I'm gonna wrap this up for now, and then we'll move to the next bookcase and just continue on with that next time. Sorry about that book too.